time for the open source section, this is just where we talk about some stories we reported on, kind of give us the background of it. And Nate, you have a really good one because you had to go to Pittsburgh for some reason.
I did have to go to Pittsburgh. Last week I was in Pittsburgh to see the unveiling and launch of Uber's self-driving cars. There's a lot of companies that have been working on self-driving cars, obviously, but Uber's, you can go to Pittsburgh right now and hail an Uber X, and you might end up getting a self-driving car, which is pretty crazy. I think that these are actually out on the road and paying customers can use them. Although, actually, if you get a self-driving car, your ride will be free because they're not making people pay for those yet.
Sweet.
But yeah, so I got to go down there, get an overview of the technology, see the cars, and go for, I was in the car for about an hour riding around Pittsburgh. And it was pretty crazy. What was crazy about it was how boring it was.
Well, describe the setup. So
Sure.
it's you in the passenger seat.
No, so I'm in the back seat of
Okay.
it. It's like a Ford sedan, pretty basic car. I'm sitting in the back seat. There's an iPad in the back which shows a bunch of information on your drive. It shows you can see sort of the radar view that the car has of like it's got a sensor on top and all over the car that maps out the world around it. And you can see what it's seeing. You can see the position of the steering wheel. You can see when the brakes are being applied, how fast you're going, what the speed limit is, how far you've driven in autonomous mode. And up front, there's two people, one in the driver's seat, who's your safety driver. He's got his hands on the wheel and his feet over the pedals the whole time. And in the passenger seat is another one of Uber's engineers who's got a laptop with more comprehensive data on what's going on.
Okay.
So these cars can't drive all over Pittsburgh. There's specific routes, even specific lanes that they can be in autonomous mode in. But if you pick a route that it can do autonomously, then it just drives you there.
So regular customers are also going to have a human in the front seat?
Yes. They're
Whose job is only
far
to hold
from
their hands above the steering wheel. Yeah.
So how would you explain the purpose of that?
of the person or what they're doing in general.
Right. So, what's the purpose of a self-driving car if it needs to be chaperoned by a human still?
I think that we're just far too early in the process to let them off the
I'd be
leash.
surprised if they just let those things loose.
Yeah, there's going to need to be a lot more testing and regulations before that can happen.
So this is to ease people into it for public testing.
It's to ease people into it, and so the cars can continue to gather more data, so Uber can get feedback on how people feel about these drives, and so on and so forth. And what's interesting to me in the experience I had was that when the driver had to take over, it wasn't because the situation was unsafe. Mm-hmm. It was because the car didn't properly process what was in front of it. Let me give you an example. We were driving down a one-lane road, pretty narrow, and there was a large tractor-trailer truck pulled over. The car thought it was a car that was just stopped, like it was waiting at a traffic light or something. It doesn't know to go around it, right? It doesn't know that this car is pulled over, unloading, double parking, etc. So the driver had to take over and guide the car around this pulled over tractor-trailer truck.
Mm-hmm. So every time a human takes the wheel, that incident is somehow logged and analyzed?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So it knows obviously when the driver takes over, and it's recording everything around it so it can kind of process and learn from those experiences. Another time we were at a four-way stop sign, and because the car has utmost safety in mind, it is expecting the other cars at the intersection to come to a complete stop before it will proceed. But as we all know, nobody actually comes to a complete stop in this world. So cars keep on rolling through the stop signs, and the self-driving car just kind of sits there and waits. So eventually the driver had to step up and take his turn there.
Yeah.
But it was really interesting. I thought it was, it was far less weird than I expected it to be, which is good. You want it to be boring.
Mm-hmm. So where do these human chaperones come from?
I believe that they are all Uber engineers, I want to say.
Okay, so they're not just part of the sharing economy the way normal drivers are. Okay.
This is a totally independent separate program. There's not too many cars really out there on the road. If I had to guess, I'd say it's probably under 30.
Did they tell you why Pittsburgh? Why did they
So they opened I think they call it their Advanced Technologies Lab, opened in Pittsburgh 18 months ago.
Is Carnegie Mellon nearby?
That's correct.
Why.
So that's essentially why they picked it. There's a lot of startup in advanced technology in Pittsburgh right now. I think owing a lot to the universities and so forth. And they got in there. They've been working on it. And I guess the city itself was very friendly to the thought of them getting these cars on the road. So the self-driving cars have been out there for a good, I think, at least 6 months now. But just now they're starting to take passengers.
And we've seen some, I know the government is talking more about its policies around self-driving cars now too, right?
That's right. Yeah, this week.
We're seeing a lot happening all at once.
Yeah, well, I'm sure that the timing of this the announcement there from the government is coinciding with what's happening. I think President Obama wrote an op-ed in a Pittsburgh paper about this specifically, just saying that, like, yes, we're going to try and regulate this at a government level so each state doesn't have to sort of fight for its own regulations, right? So they're going to try and make it more streamlined so it can roll out across the country. And one of the questions I had was, like, where does this program go for here? And I think if, like, the government can actually make this a thing that's implemented nationwide, it'll be easier for Uber to, you know, take it to another city.
Did Uber give you like a timeline for when they
No,
expect
they're really
any of this
not.
to happen?
I mean, they're really not talking much about that right now. It's there's still a lot of the city that isn't mapped. Like, there's a lot to do.
So I'm concerned about this, like with the government stepping in with its federal regulations. It seems like people really believe this will take off and eventually become a very common thing. What will happen to people who are cab drivers right now? Like, will they be displaced? Do you think, like, that's something that they'll rally against?
I mean, Uber's already caused a lot of that consternation, right? I just don't know. I think nobody really knows yet. But I think it's going to be hard to argue, like, if these cars can be proven that they're safer than human drivers, then that's going to make all the difference, I think.
Right. So that means that, like, once, you know, all the safety, you know, requirements are
Yeah.
met, that they could actually replace human drivers and not have
Right.
safety drivers anymore. I mean, first of all, that sounds wonderful to me because I
Yeah.
hate talking to strangers and I don't want to talk to my driver except for, like, go here, go
Yep.
there. I'm really rude. But I don't know. I feel bad for the people who might lose their jobs because
I
of
mean,
this.
yeah, with every industrial shift like this, right? There's always a wave of people who may lose work or may have
Robots
to
in
Right.
factories, that's
Yeah.
The agricultural revolution altogether.
But I
All over
personally
again.
cannot wait for my self-driving car. I spent the last couple days in Georgia, and you just have to drive everywhere there. And thankfully, like, my younger brother, he lives there.
Chaperoned you around.
So he
Wait,
could, he
some
could just
people
take
like
us
to
everywhere.
drive.
Some
I'd
people
like
like
to
to
drive
drive.
if
The
I
thing
knew
is,
how.
drivers are terrible, and I can't trust them, and they're responsible for, you know, hundreds of thousands, I think even millions of deaths every year thanks to accidents. So
Yeah.
bring on the robot cars. I think that'll make life a lot better.
Yeah, it's going to be I think Uber did say their ultimate goal is to be able to have cars picking up people without
Yeah.
a safety driver.
I'm not sure if, like, I'm not sure how close we are to that. Like, we were just discussing
gonna
that
be a
because it
while.
really sounds like I don't know that I trust a computer to make decisions in emergency situations.
But you trust
or
the
in-
computer more than, like, a New York taxi driver?
No.
They're
I
terrifying.
I know they are, but
You love
whatever.
them. You love them.
I love it when my driver, like, takes risks and is like, I know, like, when I'm
No.
rushing through something and I'm running late,
Yeah.
I'm like, oh my gosh, why are you in the slow lane? You have to
All right, all
overtake
right.
I think
this
it could
guy."
even be a generational difference.
Yeah.
I don't know if we will ever be fully comfortable
Yeah.
being driven by robots, but
Yeah.
our kids and grandkids
Yeah.
might
Probably
be.
will okay.
I think
mean,
that I was going to say the friction that I see is going to be when there's a mix of self-driving cars and non-self-driving cars on the road.
Yeah.
I think that's going to the hard things be accounting for, you know, the
Yeah.
unpredictability of a human
And
driver.
we're seeing
Yep.
manual cars right now take in some sort of automated technology.
Yeah.
So there is, like, crash awareness. There
Yeah.
is, like, lane adjust and stuff like that. But let's move on. One more thing I want to talk about. Dana, you've been testing the Apple Watch Series 2. How's that going?
Yeah, I have the big honking 42 millimeter.
It's actually not that big, in my
version.
opinion, but
I prefer the 38,
Yeah,
but
it looks daintier.
reviewers can't be choosers. Yeah, so my review is probably going up today. And you'll notice that I've been taking my time on this. Normally, Engadget may have posted a review earlier. I've been really using it to work out because it's been positioned as a sports watch, and that's kind of what I do. I'm a marathoner.
Yeah.
So I've been taking it on runs and trying to really put it through its paces there. And what's been interesting to me is that on paper, the difference in so backing up, it has built-in GPS tracking, right? So it's supposed to track your distance a lot more accurately than the previous model. So I've been using it alongside my Garmin Forerunner 225, which I've had 2 years, and which,
That thing is huge.
yeah, well, and more more importantly, pretty accurate. And so I've been using them together, and the actual on-paper difference in distance is often pretty small.
Okay.
In one run, I did almost 4 miles. They were off by 9/100ths of a mile, which doesn't seem like that much. If I just saw the distance differential on paper, I'd say, oh, they're pretty close. But the problem is that pace calculation for runners and anyone else interested in speed for whatever sport is contingent on the distance that's measured. So even for that run where I was 9/100ths off, Apple's watch said I was 17 seconds faster than the Garmin watch did.
Okay.
And so that has been troubling to me. I don't
Yeah.
really care about small, sort of arbitrary seemingly arbitrary differences in distance. But when you tell me I'm 17 seconds faster than I know I am, that's a little frustrating for me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, 17 seconds over a full marathon would probably be an 8-minute difference, which is not nothing, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, definitely. And has Apple said anything about this? Like, will it get more accurate over time or anything? Or is this just kind of how it is?
I think it's how it is. I mean, whereas the first watch, it didn't have GPS built in, and what you had to do was take your iPhone with it. It would sort of because it was connected to your iPhone, it would then make use of your iPhone's sensors. But that I found it wasn't really a suitable solution. The results were still pretty far off. And at the time, Apple said that you could eventually calibrate the watch so that you wouldn't even need to bring your phone. I disagreed with that. I found it was never accurate enough to just leave my phone at home. Here, there's not supposed to be a calibration process. So my understanding is that the performance out of the box is what you get for most sports. So I went on the treadmill the other day, and I got a pop-up message that said, you need to please do 20 minutes of outdoor running before you do an indoor run. By that point, I had done more than 20, so I figured,
So I didn't
okay.
understand.
Do you think? I was just going to ask you. Do you think the new watch is better than the old one though, in terms of tracking distance accurately? You've had a lot of experience with both of them at this point.
It's marginally better, but it is.
Still not.
So here's where I'm at with the review. It took me a while to think through this, and I know that other reviewers agree with me. It's a really good smartwatch in terms of all the smartwatchy things it does. The selection of apps, the watchOS 3, and I know that you agree with me on this, is a big improvement.
Yep.
The layout is just more intuitive. The new watch is faster. It requires less swiping and tapping a lot of the time. And it works great as a fitness tracker. So as far as the distance, if I were just a casual walker and wanted to know how many miles I walked each day, and I wasn't concerned about how fast I was going, those 900ths of a mile wouldn't bother me.
Yep.
So I think it's really only an issue for people who are training for events where speed matters. For those people, I still don't think the Apple Watch cuts it. I think you would still want a dedicated sports watch from something like Garmin or Timex. But if really what you want is a smartwatch that can double as a pretty good fitness tracker, this is good.
Has the heart rate tracking gotten any better?
I've never really had an issue with that.
I've never had an issue with it. I mean,
I guess in terms of accuracy, I used to compare it to like one of the other Garmin's or some stuff from Fitbit, and the numbers would
At one
always
point,
be
I was
slightly
wearing
different.
both. I was wearing multiple watches, just a testament.
Yeah.
They seem to be close enough.
Okay.
for both generations of watches, both this year and last year, the funny thing is that even if I could have some troubling differences in pace, the estimated calorie burn was always in roughly the same neighborhood with the Apple Watch versus whatever I was comparing it to. So that's interesting to me.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very cool. All right. Thanks, Dana. So we're going to look for your full review later today.
Hopefully today. Yeah.
Okay. Very cool. Did you want to add anything?
I was going to say that I'm not as hardcore of a runner as Dana, but I have been running more lately, so I'm curious to see how it works. And I'll say, though, I think for a lot of people who aren't, at your level doing marathons, but still want to be more active, like they're not going to have something to compare it to. So as long as it's in that neighborhood, it's
Right,
probably going
and
to be good enough for a lot of people.
I'm still finessing my review, but that's
Yeah.
one point I want to make, that if you're just going for a casual jog and you're running just to
And you want something to control your music too, maybe
be
like
active,
that
make
sort of
yourself
thing,
feel good, that's good. But if you're training
Yeah.
and the problem is that I feel like in Apple's marketing materials and its promo videos, it does feature some people like me who look like they're really taking their sport seriously.
But does the Nike version do anything different? What is different about that one?
It just has special bands that are both sportier looking and lighter weight, slightly lighter weight and more breathable. They have a couple exclusive Nike watch faces with complications that go back to Nike's app, but you can always install Nike's app yourself as a third-party app on the regular Series 2. But other than those things, also the Nike app on the Nike watch responds to Siri commands, which is unusual for a
cool.
third-party app on
I'll probably see more
the
of
Apple
that.
Watch, yeah. But otherwise, it's basically a regular Series 2 watch with sporty bands and some Nike stuff thrown in.
Gotcha.